Hello, guess who? That's right, it's King Oberon, and guess what? It's time for another story. This time, we're going to be telling the story of Hansel and Gretel. What do you mean you've heard that one? You haven't heard that one. You've probably heard a version of that one, but you haven't heard the real version of it. And that's what we're going to be telling today. You see, in the first one that you've heard, I'm sure involves an evil stepmother. Well, that's not true. There was no evil stepmother. That was the children telling the story afterwards. So they had to make themselves look like they weren't being bad. But the truth of it was, oh, they were being naughty little children. So, you ready to hear the story? I know I am. See, Hansel and Gretel lived in the forest with their ma and their da. And their ma and da were woodcutters. Dad would go out into the wood all day long and he would chop and chop and chop and chop down trees. That's not very nice, I know. It's horrible. He was chopping down trees. Why would you do that? Why, humans? Why? Yeah. So maybe the parents weren't blameless after all. But anyhow, so the dad, he would go in and he'd chop wood down all day long. And he'd bring the wood home. And when he brought the wood home, Ma would pack it up and she would carry it off to the market to sell it that day. And while she was gone away, she would tell Hansel and Gretel, "Do your chores, Hansel. Do your chores, Gretel. Feed the chickens, sweep the hut out, clean the yard, pick up the sticks, and make sure you don't let the goats away." "Yes, Ma," Hansel and Gretel would say, and they'd go about their chores, and they'd do their chores day in, day out. Well, it came to pass one day. A traveller stopped by while their dad and their ma was gone and knocked upon the door. "Hey, you ready for it?" "Hello, it's me. I'm a traveller and I am looking for food because I have been lost and I'm hungry." "Oh, we're not supposed to talk to strangers. I'll tell you how to find fairy gold if you give me food." "Oh, fairy gold." Hansel and Gretel talked about this for a moment. If we have fairy gold, then Mom and Dad would have to work so hard, and we'd have all the food we can eat, and Dad would never have to go out to the dark woods and worry about Baby Wolf getting him. "Oh, that's a good idea. We should find out. We've got a little bit. We could give him a chicken egg." "That's right, a chicken egg. We give him. Well, Mom won't know that there's a chicken egg missing. That's right. We'll give him a chicken egg." And so what did they do? They opened the door, and the stranger, the traveller, he was gnarled and knobby and all bent over and old with age, as old as the oldest trees in the woods. And then the traveller, he sat down and he ate the egg. And as he's eating the egg, he had got no teeth, so he had to poke a hole in it and he had to suck the egg out. And that's where you get the phrase, teaching your grandmother how to suck eggs. I know it's weird, but that's one of the things that humans do. I don't know why they do it. It's just a thing. Oh, don't ask me, ask your grandmother. That's right, say, "Grandma, how do you suck eggs?" That's right, it's a real thing. I don't know why. So, there we were, and the traveller, he's sucking on the egg and he's making all sorts of weird noises. And he finishes the egg up, and Hansel and Gretel are waiting, and they're bouncing, and they're like, "Oh, fairy gold, fairy gold, fairy gold, fairy gold, fairy gold." And so the old traveller, he finishes his egg, and he leans back, and his back creaks. Sounds like an old door swinging open. "So, children, I tell you the story of fairy gold. Deep, deep in the woods to the north, past the old man willow and the tallest oak tree in the forest, there lies a cottage. And this cottage is made of food, sweets and delicacies that every human would want to eat. And inside this house of food is the fairy gold. But the only way to get there is to eat the house. That's right, you've got to eat the house, which is made of cookies and sweets and pastries, so you can get inside and get the gold. And if I'm lying, May the witch of the forest strike me dead. Well, thank you for the egg. I'll be on my way. And his back creaked like an old door. And he picked up his cane and he hobbled out. And as he's hobbling out, he's tapping the stick around and hits the door and almost walks into it. Steps outside. Hey, traveler, do you have trouble seeing? That I do, that I do. My eyesight's gone and I've gone blind. My stick is the only way I can find my way. But should you get lost looking for the fairy gold, just knock 3 times. And I'll hear you and come to save you. Oh, that's good. We're gonna go look for fairy gold tomorrow. As if you should. That's a good idea. And with that, the traveler disappeared in a sparkling mist. Oh, where did he go? I don't know. But he must be magic if he's going to come help us if we tap 3 times. Just think of what we can do with the money and the gold. We can pay for everything. We'll never go hungry again and Mom and Dad won't have to work so hard. Well, that day, Mom and Dad finally got home as the sun was setting. Came in tired. Sat down to dinner and asked the kids, well, children, what did you do today? Oh, Dad, we did all our chores and we cleaned and we swept and we took care of the house just like you said. Oh, that's good. You're good kids. Tomorrow I'm going off into the woods to chop wood and your ma's going to sell wood. Okay. Make sure you do your chores. We will. On the next day, Mom and Dad left and Hansel and Gretel, they hopped up. Alright, let's go. Hurry, do the chores real quick and then we'll go find the fairy gold. So they hustled and bustled and they ran around the whole house and they did all their chores lickety-split. And as they were finishing up, Hansel had picked up the bag of chicken feed to feed the chickens and he thought to himself, Gretel, look, we can lay chicken feed as we're going into the woods. That way we don't get lost and we can find our way home. Oh, that's a good idea, Hansel. We should do that. And so they set out off into the woods to the north to go past the ancient oak tree and old man willow. And they started laying the chicken feed as they're going along. And as they're walking through the woods, they hear bark, 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 coming from behind him. And Hansel, he looks behind him and he doesn't see anything. And Gretel, she looks behind her and she doesn't see anything. And so they go for a bit, maybe until the sun's about midday high in the sky and the bag of chicken feed is about half empty now. And they're walking along and they still hear that sounds like the chickens. So they stop and they start tracing back the chicken feed. And sure enough, the whole gaggle of chickens had followed them into the woods. That's right, 11 of them. 11 chickens and a rooster named Ugly. And so they're like, oh, you bad chickens. What did you do? You ate all the feed. And sure enough, the chickens had eaten the feed all the way up to Hansel and Gretel. So Hansel and Gretel, they looked on the ground, and it's a good thing there was a bunch of chickens because there was chicken footprints everywhere. They looked like triangles, kind of like that. And so they marched back to the house and they followed the chicken footprints all the way home. Oh, you bad chickens, you almost got us lost in the woods. And the chickens, all they had to say for themselves, just like chickens do. And Ugly, because you know, Ugly's a rooster and that's what he does. Well, that night, their parents came home. Children, what did you do today? Oh, we did our chores, Dad, and we took care of the chickens and we fed them and we took them for a walk. Don't go into the forest now. I don't want you getting lost. Oh, we won't, Dad. We had the chickens with us. So the next morning dawned, and the Dad, he went off into the woods to chop the wood, and the Ma, she went off to sell the wood in the market. And the children, they hustled and they bustled and they ran around to finish their chores as quick as they could. And Gretel says to Hansel, Hansel, we need to put the chickens up this time before we go out. That's true, but then we have to feed the chickens, and if the chickens don't get fed, then they won't lay eggs. Oh, and we've only got the 1 bag of feed left. Well, we have to feed the chickens, because they weren't all bad children, so they made sure the chickens got fed. So they fed the chickens. And Hansel had the great idea, oh, I'll gather up stones and we can follow stones up. Oh, that's a good idea. Chickens won't eat stones, neither will birds. So they put the chickens up and Hansel set about gathering stones. But after an hour or so, he only had 5 stones. And 5 stones is nowhere near enough to follow to get past the old oak and past Old Man Willow in the forest. Well, all they had left was a large loaf of black bread, and it was the only bread in the house. And Hansel looked at it, and Gretel looked at it, and their tummies were hungry, because that was supposed to be their food for the day, you know. And Hansel said, but if we get all the fairy gold, then we can buy as much food as we want, and nobody ever go hungry again. Oh, that's true. We'll take the black bread then, and we'll break it up, and we'll leave a trail of breadcrumbs as we go through the woods. That's a good idea. And so off they went traipsing through the woods to the north, looking for the fairy gold in the house of food. And as they traveled through the woods, they're breaking off bits of bread, and dropping them behind them. And every so often, they stop and look to make sure the bread's still behind them. And sure enough, they can see a few crumbs of bread through the forest behind them. Little did they know, though, the birds of the forest love bread, almost as much as I love cheese. And so as they're laying the breadcrumbs, the birds are creeping along behind them, and they flutter down, caw, caw, this bread is delicious. And they pick the bread up and they eat it. And as I go along, and of course, you know, Hansel and Gretel, they hear the crows, but they've heard them all the time in the forest. Caw, 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 caw. Because humans don't speak crow like I do. So they don't know the birds is saying, I love bread. And they go and they travel all day long. And they pass Old Man Willow. Oh, what a sight he is. A huge ancient willow tree with long sloping branches hanging down, dripping all the way to the forest floor. And they stop at Old Man Willow for a bit because they're tired, and they rest for a moment. By that time, Gretel looks up and realizes it's getting dark, and the bread's almost gone. There's only a little bit left. Hansel, we've got to turn back. You're right, Gretel, we've got to go back before it gets too dark and we can't see the bread. And the children, they start making their way back, but they've only gone a short distance when what should they see? They see the crows hopping along the trail, picking at the breadcrumbs. Caw, caw, caw. And the birds fly off. Hansel, they've stolen the bread. I see they took the bread, and there's no trail to follow because the crows fly. That's right, kids and adults. They were lost in the woods, and it was getting dark, and there's no trail to follow. So alone and afraid, the sun starts to set on Hansel and Gretel, and they hold each other close, crying, "Oh, we should have listened to Mom and Dad." But of course it's too late now because they're lost in the woods. But as the sun starts to set, what should they see but a light in the forest? Almost like a fire, a blue flame off in the distance. You might call it fairy fire. Well, right, anyway, so they thought it was fire. And the children, they head towards the light. And as they get closer and closer to the light, what should emerge from the forest but a cottage? That's right, a cottage made out of sweets and foods, breads and porridges and pastries and icing all over, and giant licorice sticks growing right out of the ground, and the ground itself covered with a sweet smelling fragrant grass. Fragrant means it has a strong scent to it, aroma if you will, not like goat feet, but it smells good. And so the children, they run up to it. Hansel, we found the house. Gretel, we found the house. And they fall up on the house because they're hungry, and they jump at it. And they, oh, look, it's in there. They point at the windows, and the windows are spun sugar. And they look at the lollipop. Oh, it's got licorice growing from the roots. And they start eating like gobbly little things they are. They start shoving great gobs of house into their mouths and eating. Oh, it's so good, it's delicious. And from inside the house, all of a sudden, "Nibble, nibble, little mouse. Who's that nom nomming on my house?" "Oh, there's somebody here. I don't know who. It's Hansel and Gretel." "Oh, okay." And they hear a creaking sound like an old door opening. But there is no door to be seen. And they look around and they're scared for a bit, and the sun keeps sinking into the night sky till the moon rises pale and shining through. And the children finally, overcome with hunger, start nibbling on the house again. "Nibble, nibble, little mouse. Who's that nom nomming on my house?" And the children, they get scared again and they stop eating and they look around for a bit, but they don't hear anything. But their eyes are getting sleepy and their eyelids heavy, and the magic of the house starts to take its toll. And soon the children fall into a deep, deep sleep. And when they awaken the next day, they're no longer outside on the grass. They're inside. And Hansel's in a cage. And Gretel, she's got a chain around her ankle and she's chained to the fireplace. And who should be there but the old bent-over traveller? That's right. The old bent-over traveller had tricked the children and lured them to his house in the woods. "Well, well, children, you have awoken at last. I'm going to fatten your brother up and I'm going to eat him, and you are going to keep my house as clean as your parents' house." And Gretel and Hansel, they cried and asked to be let go, but the old traveller would hear none of it. He would take a stick and bang it against the cage 3 times. "If I knock a 4th, it's off with your heads." Oh, and the children were scared of that because that's a scary thing. The old traveller was blind, but it seemed he could hear everything they were doing. Even the slightest whisper as they try and talk, the old traveller would speak up. "I hear you nibble, nibble, little mouse. Nibble, nibble, you won't escape this dark old house." And so Gretel, she was forced to cook and clean for the old traveller. And the old traveller each day would feed a large bowl of porridge to Hansel. And Hansel, he's hungry, so he eats. And every day the old traveller would walk over to the cage. "Give me your finger, boy. I wish to hold it to see how fat you are." And Hansel, being smart, he had a chicken bone in his pocket, and he would hold the chicken bone out for the traveller. Here you go, old traveller." And the old one would reach over and grab the chicken bone. "There's hardly a lick of meat on this bone. I'll starve trying to eat you." And each day that would go by, Hansel was getting fatter and fatter. Oh, he had eaten so much porridge. Finally, a week, 2 weeks had passed. And the old traveller came over. "Give me your finger, boy. I want to see if you're fat enough to eat." And Hansel held out the bone again. And the old traveller grabbed it. "There's hardly a lick of meat on here, barely enough to eat. But I am starving. I will eat you anyway. Gretel, fire up the oven." "Oh no!" "Yes. Do not make me knock a 4th time." And Gretel, she fired up the oven and got it started. And the witch came over, for that's what she really was a witch in disguise. "Is the oven started?" I feel the heat from it. And Gretel's, oh yes, the oven started, but I can't reach the back there. Silly girl, use your arms. And Gretel being smart, she couldn't quite reach the back, not without some help. She said, oh, if only I could reach the back, the fire would be hotter and your food would be ready sooner. And the witch, being a greedy creature, full of darkness and mischief, she reached into the oven herself to light it, and Gretel shoved her inside and slammed the door closed. And the witch began howling and thrashing about, ah, evil children! Evil children! And she turned into a pack of crows, caw, caw, and flew up through the chimney. And the children, they ran off into the woods to escape the witch's house. And so, the children, lost in the woods again, the sun setting, they sat down and they began to cry. Oh, Hansel, we're never going to get home. We're never going to see our mom and our dad again. I know, Gretel, I know. We should have never left. We should have never talked to that stranger. Oh, Mom and Dad were right. We should have stayed by the cabin in the woods. And they cried and they wept. I mean, well, I'm trying to take a nap. And I hear this wailing and the crows. Caw, caw, dee-hee-hee-hee. Oh, what is all that noise going on over there in the woods? Surely old man Willow's not doing all that. He's beating around on those trees. And they're wailing and gnashing. Ah, we're never gonna get home. I'm never gonna get a nap in at this rate. So, me, that's right, King Oberon, I went to go see what was going on in the woods. And sure enough, when you know it, there were two wee human children there. So I hoofed on over. Guess who? Ah! That's right, it's King Oberon, and it's your lucky day. I need a nap and you're too loud. Please don't eat us. I'm not gonna eat you crazy little things. I'm gonna take you home. I'm tired of hearing you carrying on in my woods. So I scooped him up under my arms and I went bounding through the woods. Ugh. I'm tired of carrying fat kids everywhere. Ugh. How much did she feed you? She fed me porridge every day. I don't want to hear about it. That's too bad for you. I was tired. It was a long way, at least half a mile. So we got back to the house, and I dropped the children off at their cabin. Stay out of my woods, and don't go near the witch's house no more. There's no fairy gold for you. You're like that 10th kid in the last month I've had to go rescue out of there. Stop it. It's not a good place to go. You hear me? Yeah, yes, King Oberon. Yeah, that's right. Bye-bye. And so I hoofed on out of there, and the children were reunited with their parents, and they lived as happily as wood people can live in the forest after that. On the plus side, I did get a nap, so I was happy about that. But that was like the 10th pack of children in a month. Me and the witch are gonna have to have words. I'm tired of her doing that. I mean, really, who does that? Anyhow, what did you learn about this? Really? Come on now. Don't talk to strange people that show up at your house and they're not supposed to be there. And definitely don't follow their directions off into the woods past Old Man Willow. It's not a good place. And I'm tired of picking your carcasses up and dragging you back home. People are starting to think I'm a delivery service, and that's not gonna work. Got it? Good. I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.